Now, again, everything we're going to cover today, that's going to be finding the 20% that we're going to focus our attention on, okay? So our attention will be focused, 20% of it will be focused on the tissues that we are thinking are contributing significantly to the pain experience. The 80% of our attention is what's caused these tissues to be stressed in the first place, if it's obviously a non-traumatic injury, okay, or pain. So what we're going to do with the ankle, the key performance indicators with the ankle that we're going to use would be mainly our knee to wall for dorsiflexion and also plantar flexion tests such as a calf raise. They will be two that we're going to go through in a minute, but what we want to do before that is we just want to start to make sense of what we're going to see when we put this patient in standing and we actually have a look at these two tests, okay? So what I usually will do with the ankle, again, we will have looked at the whole body with our generic objective. We would have looked at other parts as well to see what's contributing to it. But for our local ankle assessment, some things that I like to do, the first thing out of habit, okay, is I want to clear a syndesmosis, okay? So again, syndesmosis, hands down, is probably the most missed diagnosis that comes into the clinic here in private practice for myself. I've been exposed to, well over 50 of these now, I reckon, over the last 10 years, okay? And again, that doesn't sound like a big number, but it's actually, it's an injury that you may not have been exposed to unless, you were, I suppose you could say lucky or unlucky in some regards. But in rugby league, especially in rugby union, working in that over the last 10 years, I've seen my fair share of these, okay? So the big one that I'm going to check with a syndesmosis, and I do this routinely, is the dorsiflexion external rotation test. So I'll cup the ankle at the calcaneus, okay, or sorry, the foot at the calcaneus. I'll keep the knee at 90 degrees, and all I want to do then is I want to externally rotate the full foot. So what happens here then is when I cause that rotation, that's going to cause a rotation in the talus, which is then theoretically going to gap that tib-fib joint, which is going to stress that syndesmosis joint or the inferior tib-fib ligaments. Okay, so obviously we've got anterior, we've got posterior inferior tib-fib ligaments. If the anterior ligaments are torn, then the person may be still quite good functionally, okay? If the posterior ligaments are torn as well, then from my experience, I usually would send them for a surgical opinion, okay? Now, the tripwire with these syndesmosis injuries is, if you do have a positive, is that there's not a lot of swelling usually. There's not a lot of swelling presents. The person feels okay. It's just a little bit sore. They feel like they don't have much power in it. But the ankle joint itself, it looks quite good usually. Okay, so that's where a lot of people are like, that's not too bad. But then if you don't do your key performance indicators, okay, you'll get caught out. Whereas if you use your key performance indicators, it'll be clear as day that it's a syndesmosis, and I'll show you that today. Okay, so that's the first test I'll do, and this one is very, very sensitive from my experience, and I know the literature covers it as well, and we're going to cover that in a later episode today. The other test that I'll use for a syndesmosis is a squeeze test, okay? So what I want to do is I want to get the tib-fib. Now don't forget the fib's going to be slightly posterior in that transverse plane, okay? So I just want to get them here. I just want to squeeze. Imagine a chopstick. I'm going to squeeze, if I squeeze this end, it's going to gap that end, okay? I didn't do that analogy very well. So what I'm trying to do here is I'm going to squeeze this end, which is going to gap that end. It's going to stress the ligaments and elicit a pain experience. Now this one, from my clinical experience, it doesn't always elicit a pain response, but usually the dorsiflexion external rotation will elicit it. And even if I miss those and I'm not very good at those tests or I didn't stress it enough, I'll still be able to find the syndesmosis usually with my calf raise. Okay, so don't stress too much about it. I'll always tell the story in Leeds. When we had a player, took him off, and we got the doc to have a look at him, and the doc just went through the motions, okay? Yeah, syndesmosis is fine, and myself and the other physio at the time were looking at each other going, what the heck? So we had a look at it then. I had a look, and I gave him a good squeeze, and he nearly jumped off the bed, okay? So again, I'd rather you be a little bit more aggressive here with these and not miss it, then rule it out because you haven't stressed these tissues enough, okay? So if you find, you cause a little bit more trauma to the fibers, I'd rather that than miss it, alone walk on it for the next 2-3 weeks. He's got a raging synovitis in the joint then. That flares up, and then he's looking at, 12 to even 16 weeks sometimes with those when they get really bad, Okay, so the squeeze test is very useful as well. If they're ruled out, they're pretty good, then we're okay at the moment. Okay, so what we'll do then obviously is I'll just do a plantar flexion inversion. Have a look. Again, I like to feel that ATFL, and a lot of people, they'll have ruptured them long ago. Okay. Another thing I like to do is I want to push into the ball of the big toe. So I'll get the ball of the big toe, I'll get the athlete to push down into there. Push there for me, Pete. Again, I want to load that peroneals. All I want to see here is, can he get into an isometric contraction? And he can there. And then I'll load the ball of the little toe. Push again, Pete. Can he get that tib post to work isometrically as well at some point as my pressure meets his pressure and these tissues contract? Again, that's going to be important when we want to brace through that foot when we go up onto that calf raise. Okay, so that's something that I look for. And then another one, passively dorsiflexion inversion. That's another big one as well for any protective tone through the peroneus brevis in particular. Okay, so a lot of ankle sprains will see that peroneus brevis wants to lengthen, and after they've resolved, even old ones, this can be quite sensitized still. And again, that's going to be important, dorsiflexion inversion for heel strike, okay, when we're walking. So we want to be able to lengthen those tissues and tolerate loading in that direction. Obviously, we can still look for any tenderness along the cuboid. The navicular is a big one as well. Okay, we want to rule out a stress fracture there. And the malleolus as well, okay, and obviously the distal tip of the fibula as well, in case there's any potential fracture there on the back of that as well, okay. So that's just your generic stuff. The big thing here is the syndesmosis. Get used to that, replay this teaching content and get used to testing that. Now, we'll get Pete up then and we'll do two KPIs that I like, which is the knee to wall test and the calf raise. So the first KPI that I like to use is the knee to wall. Okay, so again, the weight bearing lunge test or whatever they call it. Okay, so all we're going to do is we're going to get the knee to touch the wall without the heel coming up. And we're going to get that measurement from the wall to the toe. Now be careful, we've got a skirting board here in the clinic, so you'd want to take that into consideration as well, because then in the next time you test them, if you're on tour or whatever and you do it and they don't have a skirting board, you're probably going to be about 2 centimeters off. Okay, so again, you can measure the depth of the skirting board if you wish. Okay, but you're just looking, okay, to get to that point where they can just do it without the heel coming off. Okay, so Pete, if you just go through that, again, I'll get my ruler then and I'll measure the distance from the big toe, okay, to that wall, okay, and then I usually like to compare it to the other side, and you know, roughly speaking, we're looking for 10 centimeters, okay, plus. But look, I've had some athletes and they haven't been able to get anywhere near 10, and they've been quite durable. So just take that with a pinch of salt. The big thing here that I want to know is, where do they feel the restriction? Do they feel the restriction in the front of the joint, or do they feel it in the back in the calf soleus? Okay, so if they feel it in the front, then I'm thinking that there may be some protective tone around maybe some of the ligaments in the posterior side of the ankle. If they feel a protective tone in the calf, then I'm thinking it could be potentially the soleus or one of the other tissues in the deep calf, okay, that has some kind of protective tone that's not allowing these tissues to lengthen. In my mentorship, I'd go into this in a lot more detail, and we'd start to clinically reason and figure out exactly what structures are more likely to be contributing to this restriction, okay. But if they've got full range of motion there, happy days. So that would be one of the KPIs that I'm working on in my first session. Let's get back as much range of motion as we can through that ankle. That's going to be important as we get to actually tolerate loading through the ankle, okay. Especially for deceleration as well, we're going to need a little bit more of a bent knee, okay. The other big test then, if we just use the corner of the room here, Pete, is the calf raise. So I'll usually get them to do it bilateral first, okay? So just go up on your toes, Pete, and then I'll get them to do it single leg, okay? And then just lift one leg, Pete, and then do the other one. Okay, good. And then you can see Pete here, okay? What I want to see is, does he go all the way up and lock out, okay? So Pete's a bit lazy here, like most athletes, okay? If we call you an athlete, Pete. I'm only joking. So calf raise again. Okay, good. Now, has Pete anything else? So go a little bit higher for me, Pete. Pete, go, 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 go. Good. Can he get all the way up and lock out there? Okay, so a lot of athletes, they'll just go through the motions. That ability to lock out, we're going to have a lot of bracing happening through tib post, but more importantly, peroneals. Okay, so just because an athlete can't calf raise, it doesn't mean they have a weak calf. Okay, now what you're going to find with an athlete that has a syndesmosis injury is they will not be able, or a significant syndesmosis injury, is they will not be able to do that calf raise. Okay, they'll want to do it, but their brain just will not let them do it. Okay, and again, their brain presumably knows that if they do a calf raise, that's going to gap the joint. They don't have the stability there to allow these muscles to generate torque and power to actually get them up. So what you'll look like here, you just step away for a sec, Pete, is you'll see something like this, where they're trying to use their shoulder and they're just trying to do that and they're just like, I can't do it. Okay, so that to me then is a classic. Okay, syndesmosis is probably going into my the top of my list, and again we'll get your injury history, their mechanism will give us a big clue as well. And the other one, if you go up again, Pete, what I'm looking for is, does Pete have good intent through the ball of the big toe when he comes up? So if you bias your little toe here, Pete, go up through your little toe, you'll see that they'll tend to put their weight more laterally. Sometimes the calcaneus will supinate quite a bit, okay, and then if you push it all through the big toe, Pete, okay, and then you'll see here it actually E versus E, plantar flexes, okay. So if we see one or the other excessively happening and it's a big elephant in the room, then that to me then will be suspecting, okay, maybe he's not happy to load his tib post and not those tissues, or maybe he's not quite happy to load his peroneals when he pushes through his big toe. Okay, so again, that's just giving me good information. What I want to have, ideally, with these two KPIs, we're going to cover this in the ankle joint return to play the next episode, is my first session, that's all I worry about, is just getting the two of those back to some form of baseline, and then we start to worry about getting the athlete back to the next level of loading after we do that. So we're on full range, we want to restore the calf raise. All my attention, all my intervention from that 20% is going to be focused on those two KPIs. 80% of my attention is going to be focused on what caused these tissues to load excessively in the first place if there wasn't a genuine mechanism.